In this episode, we're doing the 1-year review of ownership of a 2002 Jeep Liberty. This is where the tree hit me. It is actually a little bit cracked, and then we were hit by a hit-and-run driver on the freeway. Then the Jeep was hit by a hit-and-run driver on the freeway, which really opened it up more. You can see the fenders separating, and this grill is actually, it's all just, this grill, everything's just held in by plastic clips, so I'm pretty sure the grill's gonna have to be replaced. I don't know if I'll be able to pop this back into place or not. We'll dig into that at another future date. All right, so part failures that I've had since I've owned it. I can tell you the exhaust manifold on this side, the passenger side, went out. Not necessarily a part failure. I didn't really tighten everything up or torque it down. Some of the studs broke when I did the original job. I had planned on replacing everything and just never got around to it. And about a month later, the one on this side started leaking, and you can hear it. And again, it's not a part failure. That is a technician failure, a failure on my part. I did have to replace this upper radiator hose. The power steering it was leaking a little bit for a while. We'd have to put power steering fluid in daily, but it seems to have healed itself. Other than that, AC works good. I did have to replace all the struts, the hood struts, the trunk struts. When we were off-roading and popped the bead off the wheel, we did put the spare on. It is actually a different size tire than the other ones on there, but it worked good for a little bit. All we really had to do is pop that tire back on, take it to the tire shop, pop the tire back on, and the spare went back on the back, tire went back on the front. I did have to replace this power window motor. It's always kind of weird how the power windows are controlled over on the center console rather than on the door. There's no switches on the door. It's hard to get used to. This is the Liberty Sport. When I was driving this daily to work and back, I averaged about 17 miles per gallon, which not too impressive, honestly, with the fuel mileage. It does need a couple of rear studs replaced and lug nuts. I'm sure I'll get to that eventually, but right now, 4 out of 5 is not bad. That's 80% of the lug nuts. Oh, I did have to replace the battery too. We took those 2 off-road trips when I first got it fixed. We actually took a camping trip in between those 2 off-road trips. And during that camping trip, the battery died. So I think at the end of the second off-road trip, we ended up replacing the battery. It just wouldn't hold a charge. As long as you kept it running and driving, it'd be fine, but you park it, the next morning the battery was dead. So we did have to replace the battery on this. It runs good, it's reliable, it is not comfortable. These seats here, I don't know how anybody else feels about it. I can sit in these seats for about 45 minutes and then my back is just killing me, my back and my legs. These seats are hard. They do have some really nice big side bolsters in it, which is nice when you're off-roading, but they are just not comfortable seats at all. These are some of the most uncomfortable car seats I think I've sat in a long time. There is a big transmission hump here right by the accelerator pedal. So when you're driving, it actually comes way out back here, way in the back here. So actually when you're driving, you almost got to put your foot in here, and you're almost feel like you're squished in here. At least I do. So that is not very comfortable. The 4-wheel drive works great. There's the 2 high, 4 high, neutral, 4 low. The rear differential in this, the pause traction, it locks up good. You can actually, I think I can drift this thing. I've done that before, in fact, but don't tell my wife. So it's a good four-wheel drive machine because of the rear axle. The front axle has no lockers or positive traction or anything. When you're off-roading, it really needs something in the front, because as long as you're on level ground, it does good. But once you get off a little bit, just one tire spins on the front. It just needs more. It just needs a little bit more. Not a lot, just a little bit more. Heater works, air conditioner works, all that stuff. So one of the things that's weird about this car, I've noticed the headlights, or you have the headlights on, you turn the car off, turn the lights off, and the headlights will stay on. All the other lights are off, but the headlights stay on. So that was kind of a neat feature on this, although they will stay on until you turn them off. And then what you usually have to do is turn them on and then turn them off again, and then the headlights are off. I've never seen that on any other car. I don't know if that's a Jeep thing. I'm not sure. Then the fit and finish in here is just great. I mean, I had a PT Cruiser for a long time. I think these were the same dials that were in the my 2002 PT Cruiser. They look the same, just a PT Cruiser. They were straight across. The radio looks exactly the same. The gauges look exactly the same. I mean, just the texture of everything is real cheap and plasticky. It's almost the same texture as my PT Cruiser. The door, I think the door handles, they were different, but they were kind of a similar design and style, if I remember right. The door lock knobs, same as the PT Cruiser. That's why in that first video, when I had said this is like a four-wheel drive PT Cruiser, all the stuff in here looks like the power window switches, the power door locks, all of this reminds me of straight out of my 2002 PT Cruiser. The temperature on these engines, you do need to watch the temperature. This is kind of where it likes to stay. It's just a little bit to the left of the middle. And from what I hear, this needle gets up to 3/4, and that's where you start having problems with cylinder heads and the engine overheating. I don't know how true that is, but on some of the forums, that's what I had read. So you want to watch this needle. You do not want this engine to get hot, the 3.7 liter V6, because you will start having engine problems, which is originally what happened with this car. All right, so this is the original cylinder head that came off of the Jeep. And you can see I pulled the valve spring and keeper off of this valve here, using the heads that got put on there. But this is what had happened when it got hot. Is you can see the valve seat fell out. These actually have, pop this valve out again. So these heads actually have a different metal valve seat. They're aluminum heads with, I think it's like a sintered metal valve seat with a certain interference fit, and they're pressed into place. And what I've heard was on the forums is once they start to get hot, these actually loosen up. You can see this one's actually cracked, this valve seat. It's got a small crack right there. So this actually has a crack right there. So this valve seat was actually keeping the valve from closing all the way, and this valve actually hit the piston. There's a small dent on the piston, but it wasn't enough to worry about. I definitely would not use these heads again. Once this valve hits the piston, it's more than likely bent, and then you're risking once the valve head gets bent a little bit, what'll happen is it'll bend back and forth, and the head will break off, drop into the engine, and you've got catastrophic failure. So I definitely would not use this valve again. I would replace this valve. I had heard that once one seat falls out, all the other ones are in danger of doing that as well. And it's typically the right side of the engine, front cylinder, which is the one that went out on this one. Apparently that's typically what happens. These heads are these are off the 02. The heads I replaced it with were an 05. They're actually more of a closed combustion chamber. They weren't as open like this, so that probably would have boosted up the compression a little bit. So the 02 is a non-EGR head, so we just have a blank plate here. The 05 heads actually had a port here, and the EGR valve actually bolted to this port. What I ended up doing was taking a gasket, make a pattern, and just made a steel plate, drilled some holes in it, and bolted it right over the open port. So that's how I got around that. So when we originally purchased this, there was actually lots of them for sale for cheap. Most of them were in the $600 to $800 range. The owner was originally asking $600 for this one, but it had been sitting for a while. You can go on Craigslist, OfferUp, Facebook Marketplace. I mean, any of the used car places where you can buy good, cheap, used junk cars. And you could find at least 2 or 3 of these Liberties that somebody was parting out or trying to get rid of cheap because of engine problems. So it was actually pretty easy to find cheap parts, cheap Jeep Liberties for sale, complete cars. In fact, the cylinder heads that the Jeep that these cylinder heads came off of, the owner was parting it out and said if I come back in a week I could take whatever was left. And I just didn't have room or place to store it. So I mean, I could have got a whole bunch of more extra parts, a complete Liberty, just for the cost of some cylinder heads. I paid like $90 for a set of heads and a few other parts. He threw in some other engine parts, the timing chain cover, those plastic PVC, PCV pipes. The 05 ones are actually metal, not plastic. We actually found one of them. So I have got one metal and one plastic one on here. I don't know where the other one was. But the heads were good. There was a broken valve spring. The later model Liberties had problems with the valve springs breaking. The valve spring would break. That would cause piston to valve damage as well, which could cause catastrophic failure as well. Fortunately, I think I got pretty lucky on these. Again, reading the forums, if one valve spring breaks, the other ones are probably not too far behind. But so far, these have done pretty good. So knock on wood, maybe they'll last another 100,000 miles. And taking the engine apart, seeing the intake manifold, see how everything fits together, it actually looks like it's built to be pretty robust, a pretty robust engine. Like I said, it looks like the overheating is going to be the Achilles heel of this. The Liberty showed up at my house on a trailer with engine problems. I got it fixed, have taken several off-roading trips, several family trips. This Jeep has proven itself to be more than just a machine or a piece of equipment. It's been a best friend. It's done everything asked of it. Is it the greatest Jeep ever made? I think possibly it might be.